So I will just introduce myself. My name is Michele Pavilionis, and I grew up here in Ashland, Oregon. Mixed heritage, Lenape, Lithuanian, and Sicilian. And I'm currently teaching Native American Studies at SOU with a few ed workshops this term. I just taught the medicine wheel workshop, and I'm teaching with Dr. Ronnie Adams. We did the self-awareness, and then we had to just reschedule the self-management because of the snow here. It snowed this weekend, so we'll be doing that later. And we'll be doing more of those later next term as well. And so for a check-in, there's just to kind of get started with some of the concepts with the medicine wheel on social emotional learning. So if each of you want to tell me your names again and think about how you're doing physically, intellectually, emotionally, and spiritually. Just like a brief little something about that, and then I'll share a little bit more on that after you share. So I can call on people if that helps, or because I'm sure we all look differently in a circle on each of our screens. Yeah. Well, I'll just go with Andrea first, and then you can pick the next person, and then the next person can pick the next person. How about that?
Sounds wonderful.
Okay.
So my name is Andrea Laubstein, and I'm here in Carrollton, Georgia. So checking in mentally, or you said intellectually. I feel a little bit scattered in my mind. Lots of different thoughts are running through and kind of a lot of different activities and movements of the day. So feeling grateful to be here where I can start to focus my mind on the content ahead. Physically, I just ate dinner. It's a little bit later over here on the East Coast, so I feel full and satisfied, and I got still some lingering tastes on my palate, some pasta, and emotionally, I feel quite calm, quite balanced and stable, joyful, excited, and spiritually, I feel connected. Yeah. Cheryl.
This can be hard. Spiritually, I feel open. Emotionally, I can feel up and down, sometimes steady and balanced, other times a little down with news. Intellectually, I feel stimulated with the books I have to read. Physically, I'm doing well. I feel okay. So I'll pass this to Julissa.
Thank you, Cheryl. Um, this PIES was kind of hard for me. Physically, I think I'm collecting a lot of nerves and a lot of stress, so I'm kind of achy this week. Intellectually, I'm feeling very challenged recently, which is, I think, a good place for me in my age. Emotionally, a little bit fatigued. The cup sometimes feels a little bit empty, and it's hard to pour. And kind of spiritually too. Similarly, I haven't had the space to recharge, but I think that kind of lends itself to a little bit of a low battery spiritually. And I'm gonna go ahead and pass it off to Four Arrows. We haven't met formally, and I'm excited to see you at the conference in April. So passing it on to you.
Okay, I'll take the baton. I guess emotionally, I feel compassionate. Spiritually, I feel very connected, interconnected with all the animals and creatures here in Mexico, in this remote place we live. Physically, I'm recovering from a surfing accident where I broke my wrist with my 10-year-old grandson who's been living with me for about 3 months. And what do we have? We have physical, spiritual, mentally. I'm also challenged on the ways that we can and somehow reverse this the insanity that surrounds us and build islands of sanity. It's good to be with you all. And I'm going to choose somebody. Okay. Who's left?
I think we got Camden. Camden.
Right.
Yep. Yeah, physically feeling also full. Working in the garden today a little bit was good, using a lot of the mattock to break up new ground. Always is a good workout on my body. Emotionally, I feel very at peace, have a deep well. It feels like the well is deep emotionally these days. Intellectually, yeah, very stimulated, very challenged, maybe overstimulated intellectually. Some good nuggets here and there, but I think just general overstimulation. And spiritually, I would say, wow, just really excited. Just really excited. A lot of excitement, a lot of zest around so much around what's happening all around me. It's just really exciting. Not always in the best way, but exciting, yeah, check in with that.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I'll share also and make sure am I not muting myself? Okay. So yeah, this is a good check-in that a lot of classes I do with my classes in different most every group, every class, I do this kind of check-in with everyone. I think Jalissa, I think you called it the pies, right? Have you heard it called the pies? So not always has, in my experience, in being in classrooms as a student as well, that recognition of where does this pies come from? And it really is kind of more of a traditional medicine wheel consideration, way of life, how you're walking in balance and all those aspects. And I'll say for me, like let's see, emotionally, I'm feeling pretty settled. Like my kids are okay. I feel okay. I'm all right for today, right now. Spiritually, I feel I'm in the right place at the right time. Had students that reaching out to me today that needed some help, and that made me feel like I was like in a place where they felt comfortable to come to me for that kind of help. Physically, I'm a bit tired. I could have slept a bit more last night. That would have helped my physical energy. And mentally, I'm also feeling a little bit tired. I had a full day already of teaching classes and a number of students to pay attention to. But I'm here and I'm thankful to be here. So has anyone heard of Medicine Wheel before? I'm curious to hear what your perspectives or what you know about Medicine Wheel so far. A simple version. And while somebody's waiting to talk, the reason why is because I do this to kind of read the group, like, because I can go on what people already know or what we want to know more of, and just kind of go from there. But
Yeah, for me, the medicine wheel is kind of like a multi-dimensional teaching tool. It can help teach about the individual, the person, where they're at. It can help teach about the day and what the day is doing. Can help teach about seasons and time of year. And maybe, I imagine even larger than this, and maybe even like eons of change. But it's, yeah, multifunctional. I think multifunctional is one of the words.
All right. Anyone else?
I think the only other context I've heard the medicine wheel recently was in reference to, yeah, like a guide, and someone had referred to the four. There's lots of fours involved, and there was this notion, I think, this last weekend about it being kind of there's like a compass aspect to it, a navigational aspect to it, but I think that's, yeah, the extent. It's very elementary, my understanding of how the medicine wheel is used and referred to.
Okay.
Well, and I'll just be real brief. The circle, symbolizes the continuing cycle of life from birth to death, and medicine wheels are used for balance. As you started out with your four: physical, spiritual, mental, social, etc. But I mean, I don't want to this is your show, but I'll just, when we speak of the medicine wheel, it's a very sacred symbol. Meshante ta wogala ki na pechu ze pelo chanku luto namani o chaki apo. I'm saying in Lakota that in the Lakota medicine wheel, we're in these quadrants of life so that we can walk in balance, and so there's so much as I could say, but I'm a listener.
Thank you. Yeah, so with that, I'll share some of my background experience already, just to give you some context. And my understanding is that I've participated in Lakota ceremonies since I was a teenager myself. And so I've lived my life ways experiences with my children and helping them grow up in these balancing aspects of how we operate in the world. And I'm going to show you some images to give you some visuals. Let me get the right screen up though. Oops. See if it gets me to the right page when I do this. It didn't. Okay, hold on. I was going to show you the four elements. Here it is. Okay. One version of a medicine wheel. And medicine wheel name itself, saying that in English, is actually a more colonized a way of saying it. Can you see that? Are you able to see this?
Yeah,
Okay.
we can see it.
Okay, so here's a version with more elemental perspectives. And can one person read from each of these four quadrants, or like each person take turns? Like what's in the fire section? Self-care as far as fire goes.
I can take fire. It is burning candles, lighting smudge, sweat lodge or steam bath, sitting by a fireplace or fire pit.
Okay. Somebody can read the water.
I'll do the water.
Right.
Praying with water, swimming, dipping in a river, lake, or ocean, drinking plenty of water or herbal tea protects the water.
Okay. And how about someone read the earth section?
Earth, standing on the earth, bare feet, walking or hiking in nature, gathering traditional medicines, planting and harvesting food.
And someone else can read the air.
Taking a walk in the fresh air, practicing breathing, opening windows to bring in fresh air, diffusing essential oils.
All right, so do those all kind of make sense, or things that you might do yourself already?
Mhm.
Right. So I'm gonna do another share for you. I'm gonna make it bigger if I can. If I can make it bigger. Oh, that's too big. So can you see that? Okay.
Mhm.
Another image. So in consideration, you can draw this yourself or just consider it for the moment. But so another like self-reflection, besides just saying how you're doing right now, is in this inner circle, you would say what you feel like you're doing well and in each of these aspects. And what could you work on? What do you think you could work on? And what's I found to be really insightful when I work with this with Native youth or in my different classrooms is that not everybody's considered these things before, and they haven't like really checked in with themselves. Um, but we're with ourselves like all the time, so it's just a tool to consider. And I don't know if you want to take a couple minutes to draw that or write it down or whatever you'd like. And if you have any thoughts or questions about that. I want to pull up another screen, but I want to give you a moment to look at that. Maybe you can do the thumbs up thing on the Moodle so I know when you're complete with that. Or at least writing it down. So let me know when you feel complete, Cheryl and Julissa and Four Arrows. I'll switch the screen.
Yes, I have it.
All right. Great. And Four Arrows, I'm sensing that you are understanding of this already, so.
Yeah, in fact, I just wrote a little note. My double tasking has got the best of me, and I'm gonna have to move on to the other ones. I just want to thank you. Thank you very much for doing these teachings. I think it's, we make a distinction between place-based wisdom and worldview, and this is about worldview that belongs to
Yeah.
everyone.
Yeah.
And so thank you for doing it, and I hope to see you maybe again.
Oh yeah, I'll see you at the conference for sure.
Super, we have some time to get together and talk about it.
Sounds good.
Bye-bye.
Okay. Okay, so can everybody see this screen? So this is
Yes.
just a little bit more elaboration, and this is through the Native Wellness Institute, and I took some training with them last spring. So these are these are handouts from that training. So this is talking about medicine wheel. It's a cultural and traditional model of lifestyle. It's a holistic approach to living one's life in a good way. Has 4 directions. So these directions are interdependent, so they're all happening all the time. Is about making good choices and having pride in your culture. So centering on that these teachings come from Native cultures, that's where this is where these kinds of things, if you're working with students that are Native or folks that are Native, some may or may not be connected to their culture, but this is a way to help include that and honor that and practice in a more open-minded, mindful way as well. So there are examples of what it could look like in each of those quadrants. Can anybody read those for us or have any questions about them?
I just think it's quite interesting, the movement, the physical, non-smoker, non-drinker. It's kind of like these habits that are formed in like the physical, in like the realm of the physical? Is that kind of more, okay.
Yeah,
Wow.
I mean, I could see how they could be connected to the mental because, you're making choices that come from your
Mhm.
thinking. But that's how it's kind of interdependent, but you make a choice with your mental to do a thing that affects your physical and all the way around. Yeah.
Mm.
So, any other questions on this or anything about that?
Like it's so helpful to see sometimes examples of
Mhm.
what these different quadrants refer to, because even us, those of us who are familiar with talking about what emotional is, what spiritual is, sometimes it's nice to have a wider context of what that might actually look like, practically speaking.
Yeah.
So yeah, I really appreciate that.
Mhm. And so like in the whole day of the workshop, we just kind of kept going around the circle in a way, like we just did different activities and different perspective experiences for people to find, like, go deeper within themselves, um and which kind of could lead you to like checking in with yourself like that every single day or every different kind of thing you're doing, which could help inform you on how you're gonna operate or how your group is operating, and how you might go forward with that. Let's see, I'm going to stop share for just a moment so I can check that. Okay. I just wanted to see what Four Arrows wrote in the chat for a moment. Yeah, Changleshka Wakan, that means the sacred hoop. So that's why I was partially saying that the medicine wheel English words of that are colonial, and most of traditional tribes will say they call it the sacred hoop. And that's what that Changleshka Wakan is, the sacred hoop. That's what that says right there in the Lakota. Okay. Let's see. I want to share a couple. There's other versions of how the medicine wheel has been used in different settings, especially in university settings. So I wanted to share a couple short videos on that. I just got to pull them up really quick. So if you have any questions or thoughts while I'm doing that, please go ahead and share. Or even like, what are you noticing so far about your own experience or feeling just having this kind of check-in? Like, is it uncomfortable? Is it relieving? Is it, I don't know.
Yeah, I appreciate check-ins like this. It's a good way to kind of touch into different parts of myself too, which maybe I don't normally think of as being separate. But to separate them out, I think has some, yeah, I think it's good. It's a good reminder. It's a good
Mhm.
reminder too.
Yes.
I think this experience is complimentary earlier today. I don't know if this is TMI, but I had therapy this morning and it was very pragmatic. The questions were very straightforward, prompting, and it seems like when I was moving through the feeling, the thinking, the physical, I was pinpointing some complementary feelings, some complementary reactions. And so it was a moment of kind of the same, almost therapeutic awe, but in a very dynamic. It's much more dynamic than my experience earlier, which was very AB oriented.
I appreciate you sharing that, Julissa. Right. I was going to say that I've had sometimes when I've done this, like I've done this check-in, like when I was going to teach paddleboarding class, like we were about to go get on the water together. And I'm like, I want to know how my group is doing because we're going to be out. I'm responsible for them all day long. And I noticed some students felt uncomfortable, like they didn't feel comfortable to share. It felt like too personal for them to share. And I thought that was interesting to notice how it can affect people differently. not to make assumptions that everybody's going to know how they're doing in each of those areas, or that they feel like that it's anybody else's business. Which is, you know, of course, anybody's choice to say what they want to share or not. So I don't want to make assumptions. I don't like to, but does everyone here know about social emotional learning or some aspect of it? Okay, great. All right, sorry, it was on another screen. So I'm going to share this short video. I'm going to see if it'll work with the screen share. And go to screen share and go here. You can see this? I'm going to play this video and see if it works. This is 3 minutes long. Let's see if it works. Can you hear it?
Hello and welcome everybody. My name is Elsie and I work here at First People's House as an elder in residence, one of the elders in residence. Today I'll be talking about the concept of the medicine wheel, which there's an example here behind me. There's one on the drum here, and you'll see the medicine wheel in so many places, what it is. And what it really is there's no, it's a way of life, a way of handling yourself, I suppose. I want to say regulating yourself. So for example, the 4 quadrants, this thing teaches about the 4, so the 4 stages of your life, the 4 directions, the 4 natural laws, the physical, the emotional, the mental, the spiritual, like that. Say this is the physical, emotional, mental, spiritual, the way I was taught. The child, the adolescent, the adult, and the senior. If I was to give you each a wheel, I'd start here 0 to a 10. You will tell me how you're doing physically on a scale of 0 to 10. Are you eating properly? Are you sleeping properly? Are you going for a walk, getting fresh air, drinking water? Or are you smoking, drinking, and partying? I don't know. I would have to ask you that. And, it's just you. You have to be honest with yourself. So how about emotionally? Are you really up and down, or are you pretty balanced? On a scale of 0 to 10, this kind of helps you oh yeah, I never thought of that, What are you doing mentally? Are you studying? Are you seeking out that mentor? Are you doing the extra that you have to do to get that paper in? And the most important one, well, they're all important, but the spirit of you, the essence of you, are you happy with who you are as a student, as a person? We talked to some students, and what I found out is some of them, that's their first time. They're the first one out of their family to come to university. That's kind of a common theme, and I don't know about other cultures, but boy, that's big. So here at First People's House, we're kind of like their extra family, and we want to give them these teachings, want to encourage them, want to say, hey, you're doing good. What do you need to do a little more to get yourself in balance? This wheel is only a symbol to teach us how to keep in balance, how to regulate yourself. Anytime you need somebody, come and see one of the staff, and they will direct you to us or contact us. Even when we're working from home, we're still with you. So keep that in mind, okay? And I'll do my best to keep you on track. Thank you.
All right. Any thoughts or questions about that one? Have you heard of that before? Where'd everybody go? There you are. Okay, you were all able to see it and hear it? Okay, good. All right, I'm going to do this one other one that's about 9 minutes, unless you have something to say, please. Okay. You want to go to the next one? All right. I can only see like two people at a time, so.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll do this next one. It's another version of how medicine wheel teachings work. And it is quiet at first.
Reclaiming Youth at Risk was an attempt to show the world some of the wisdom that comes out of Aboriginal culture and life, and in particular, how it is that Aboriginal people raise strong children. See, we know that your mind has to be educated if you're going to live well in Canadian society. It's a complex society. It's a complex culture. And you really need to have an education to live well in this society. If you don't have grade 12, the quality of your life is going to be diminished. If you don't have that education, not only your own life, but the lives of your children and your grandchildren are negatively impacted if a person leaves school before completing grade 12. So you have to have an educated mind. But what our ancestors were particularly skilled at was teaching a person's heart. Now, we don't even have a good word for that. Some societies have talked about the cultures, some societies have talked about the virtues. At UBC, we always use the term formation to talk about the learning that can occur on the inside of a person, the learning that can occur in the human heart, because it doesn't work the same way as learning in the mind. I can teach somebody's mind by just talking to them. That's enough to get an idea in a person's head. But I get something into your heart only if I give you certain experiences. See, we know from about a century of research that there are 4 kinds of experiences that create a strong human being. Number 1, if you know that you are significant. Let's see, I see you every day, and I say to you every time I see you, you're very important to me. Well, after 10 years of doing that, I've talked to your mind. So how do I get it down into your heart? By how I treat you. How I treat you will place that learning into your heart. So every human being needs to know these 4 things: that I am significant, that I am capable, that I'm powerful on the inside, and that I'm a genuinely good human being. My co-authors and I took these 4 human needs and we looked to see how our ancestors raised children to experience that, and we put it around a medicine wheel. Because our discovery was that our ancestors knew that belonging lets you know how important you are. Mastery is how you experience what you know, what you're capable of. Independence, in the sense of being responsible for yourself, that kind of power on the inside is how I will know that I'm a strong human being. And fourthly, if I live a life of generosity, that's how I will know my goodness. And I will need to restore that sense of goodness if I ever go through a crisis of some kind. So let's think briefly about these 4. Belonging is probably the most necessary human experience. It's in every child. If I had a mom sitting on the chair here and a baby's crawling on the floor, the baby looks up and sees unfamiliar faces. Where's that baby going to go? Crawl right over to mom, right? How do you teach this to a baby? Do you put arrows on the floor? Do you give them learning objectives with pre-tests? No, it's in them. They come that way. Every baby in the world knows that it's important to belong. Every teenager in the world wants to be with friends, and that's normal for all teenagers. And so we want to think about this theme of belonging as a strategy. First of all, it's a philosophy. It's a way to look at the world. Everything belongs somewhere. Every human being should belong to someone. We should train ourselves to respond with belonging and write it into every policy that we have. Belonging should be a theme. Lots of schools imagine they are very belonging places, but when a teenager is in crisis, how do they respond? Unbelonging. But they don't call it unbelonging. They give it other kinds of names like time out, they will say. Zero tolerance. They will say out of school suspension. It's the wrong response. What you want to do when a person is in crisis is surround them with special connections. We want to train ourselves to respond with belonging. That has to become a part of our philosophy. We have to find technique ways that we can embody this, because we want people to learn this by experience if they're going to be strong. See, the circle of courage philosophy is how you turn someone's intergenerational trauma in a positive direction. You change a person's biological legacy in a positive direction if you provide lots of belonging experiences and experiences of mastery. It's in every human being to want to succeed. The parent of a 3-year-old will tell you every argument you have with a 3-year-old is whether or not you're going to let her do it herself. The parent of a 16-year-old will tell you every dispute you have with that 16-year-old is whether or not you're going to let him do it himself. And when you come to visit me when I'm living in the nursing home, listen to what I say to the staff, because pretty often it's going to be, let me do it myself. Every human being has a desire to succeed, yet we can break it. Mastery isn't getting something done. Mastery is discovering what you can do, because that's naturally in every single human being. So if we want people to have these qualities down the left column, we have to make sure that they discover what they can do. It has to become a philosophy, but it also has to be a source of techniques as well. Independence we're using in the sense of responsibility, being responsible for yourself. And the best strategy that adults have here is using discipline appropriately. My task is to teach my children how they don't need me, how to be so empowered that they don't need me any longer. And that's what discipline does. If as a parent, I take the role of being a coach and a cheerleader, that's the perfect kind of parenting that we can give. Discipline gives you a person who makes a decision because it's right, not because anybody's watching. And they're very different kinds of dynamics. Our real job as adults is to empower young people so they don't need us anymore. If you look back at the traditional ways of your people, you will discover that gradually and appropriately we empowered our young people until they became people who contributed to our communities and who took their rightful role as adults and did all the right kinds of things. Our system was not a system of control. It was a system of empowerment. And that's typical of Aboriginal childcare. If we want people to have the qualities down the left column, we have to give them opportunities for generosity. This is why on the coast, people have a tradition of potlatch. We use them to mark any turning point in our life. And our custom is we invite everybody we know, we feed them. And enough food isn't enough. There has to be too much food. There has to be so much food that everyone carries some home. That's when you have enough food. And then we deliberately accumulate all the goods we can so we can give them away. So everyone takes something home as a memento of this event, and we'll remember this event. They were witnesses to this event then. You're supposed to give away until you don't have anything left. And actually, it's only when you get to that point that you can turn your life in a positive direction. Real generosity hurts. Real generosity has to cost. My point in this circle of courage is to say this is a resiliency code. If you want to be a strong human being, you have to have these 4 kinds of experiences over and over again. See, we can't guarantee that your life is going to be free of problems, because nobody's life is free of problems. Everybody has problems. But if you have resiliency, which is what you get out of these experiences, the resilient people, when life knocks them down, get up one more time. And if you look into the face of a child, you will see in the heart of that child everything that we can be. And we can become that if we use these themes of belonging and mastery and independence and generosity. Thank you for inviting me.
Your buttons. Stop. I'm trying to get it to stop, sorry. Okay. Did that work?
I think so. Yeah, you're unfrozen now.
Okay. No, but I can't see any of you. What happened here? Okay. I'm okay there. Hi. All right. Any questions about any of that? Or thoughts or
Could you
anything?
explain more? It was really interesting. Thank you. Both of those were great.
Yeah.
In speaking about independence, you mentioned discipline. And that was really curious to me because a lot of times when discipline is mentioned, it feels like, depending on how it's done, of course, it can feel like it's possibly robbing a child of their independence. Or so can maybe you can speak a little more on that. It's really curious.
Well, I think in that consideration, I think it was, I just like the example that he shared about how in some schools, and this was a discussion that came up in the workshop too, is that the way students, when they get in trouble for not following along, it's not giving them the choice to make better decisions. Like, it's like, nope, you don't belong automatically. You didn't fit in with this, so now you have to go be somewhere else. And I mean, I think it's like kind of questions like, how is that really serving the child's learning? I don't know if that helps answer that, but that's what my thoughts are thinking from that question. Let me see if I can give you some more to look at or read about. I appreciate you asking that. No, there's a whole curriculum page on that specifically. There we go.
Well, I wonder if it's, I don't know, I'm just thinking out loud, but if there's something around like giving discipline or leading a disciplined life, kind of, and enacting that over and over, like kind of teaches the heart. I like this teaching the heart, teaches the heart how to move to what's important, or, and that gives for the independence piece of it. So like discipline leads toward, I don't know, knowing the right direction forward. Maybe, I don't know.
Sure. Yeah,
Hmm.
I mean, that's a good consideration. Can you elaborate more on what, like, do you feel worried about something, or is something concerning about that perspective, or I'm just curious.
For me,
Yeah.
it was really I was just really curious about it because I've just never heard it in that context. So I like to be challenged in maybe the way that I'm normally thinking about those terms. And as I'm sitting here and trying to think about it some more, also questioning my own assumption of sometimes discipline feels very externalized. Is someone else trying to impose that discipline on the child, or if it's more of a internalized discipline, a way of being in your own life, and helping to create an environment where the child feels that self-discipline creates a certain power for them to be independent. So I'm kind of trying to rework my assumptions around that.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm thinking of discipline. I like one thing that's coming to mind in consideration of that is, and I'm multitasking at the moment because I'm trying to look for more information for you at the same time. Well, this part's talking about from dependence to independence. But for example, in the teachings of like how we take care of our members of our community and our family, and we take care of our elders and our youth, and that's like a given that, like, they mentioned the 4 quadrants of a life cycle, like birth, infancy, or early childhood, and then adolescent, and then adulthood, and then senior. And in some of the teachings I've been around and experiences around ceremony things is that, like, when we get to that adult phase, it's our job to take care of our elders and take care of the youngers. Whereas like the youngest are there to be themselves and know that they'll be taken care of, and kind of things like that. I'm going to share the screen again just to show you if it'll work. Okay. Oh, I made it too small. I could probably link this in the chat so it's easier to read or for you to have for your own reference. But it is talking about from dependence to independence. So maybe, you know, realizing, what are they talking about here? Learning to be independent, like making choices, like learning to get those choices that would help you make better, have better experiences. I think I'll just put this in the chat because this is hard to look at it like this.
Yeah, because they even mentioned how, you know, young people who have been disciplined respectfully. Yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
that respectful discipline.
It's just honoring people as people, like, and not just like, oh, you're in my program and you're supposed to do this and that, but I don't really care about you because you just have to follow what the program is. Let's see if that
Mm.
No, it's really interesting. It's really challenging me.
Yeah.
I really appreciate that.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's, I mean, it's honestly, as an educator and being in spaces where there's not a lot of Indigenous or Native perspective and worldview being in the mainstream of teaching. Like, in fact, when I got my, you know, I got a certificate in holistic education here at SOU, and most of my learning as a student and advocacy has been about teaching about Indigenous perspective and Native point of view. And when I was doing all of the holistic ed stuff, I'm like, this is holistic education. Like, all the experiences of Indigenous practices is holistic. It just is. And it's not necessarily, in my experience so far, it's not really added into the curriculum that's being taught, even here at SOU. So that's why I've like made this workshop, because I was a little bit frustrated. I'm like, wait a minute here. So that was a little bit of tangent, I think, but what else can I share with you? What else would you like to know?
I've really appreciated the writings that are found over in the Holistic Education Review on the journal. They
Yeah.
recently invited Indigenous people to write papers, and I've found those are really remarkable. They're
They are. There's a few really good ones, and I think Four Arrows helped kind of guide that. But yeah, there's a few good ones, and I'm thankful for that too. I just kind of discovered those recently also, and I was like, oh, good. Like, here's some of that.
I was wondering, did you write one? Or I don't recall.
I didn't write one. I didn't write one of those articles, but it did inspire me and helped. You know, I've utilized some of those. I think I linked them in my the whole day workshop for more people to read. Yeah.
I liked
talking about,
especially by her name was Devona Lone Wolf. Isn't that a great name? It was something about what if, and it was about what if as colonizers met with the people who were already here. What if there was more respect shown and a sharing? What if? It wasn't very, it's not very long, but, and then I just really liked her name.
Yeah. Yeah, the what ifs, like, you know, we would be in a different kind of experience right now for sure if there was people were treated differently when the contact happened here in this country. And I like to remind people, like, we're all part of the mess. Like, like teaching about these things is like, specifically in Oregon, they have a Senate Bill 13, Tribal History, Shared History, that's now a law as of 2017, I believe, that Native education is required to be taught in pre-K through 12th grade about the 9 tribes of Oregon. They're only the 9 federally recognized tribes of Oregon, but that is a law, and that's something I've been advocating for in our teacher education program here, is because it's not being taught as a required class so far still. And in fact, even in the medicine wheel workshop, I asked the class full of people that are becoming teachers if they even heard of it before, and nobody had heard of it. Nobody in the whole classroom, which again tells me like we have a long ways to go. And yeah, Julissa.
I'm so glad you said that, because there's a little bit of frustration as, you know, as an aspiring educator going through a grad program, kind of being plopped into like this political warfare, and losing that essence of like healing and compassion, like the purpose of a lot of the like a lot of this policy that's getting pushed out is kind of getting at that, right? Getting at, we should be teaching from a place of heart, but there's like this huge gap in how informed young educators are, or teacher prep programs are staying informed on how to do that, and kind of like what lens to start with. Because it could be a little bit off-putting, I think. Kind of just the aggression sometimes with delivering some things that are kind of rudimentary to our existence. But sorry, I'm like getting blown up on my phone or on my laptop. But I'm just curious, what do you think, what has been like working really well with like, you can see the light in someone's eyes when it clicks, or a tear shed when it kind of clicks, to how this could be delivered better and more sustainably for young people entering into a changing, like not a changing world, but the expectations of teacher education and the expectations of educators to deliver. Do you know what I'm trying to say? I can't quite find the right
I mean,
words.
I think so. I get what you're saying a little bit. And I guess where I'm initially thinking is just like what they said in that video, like coming from the heart and recognizing our humanity. Like we are all human and come from come from different worldviews that we either grew up with or we've learned more about. And I found in my research practices that the more using language that is welcoming, or that is like recognizes that yes, this might be uncomfortable, but not like accusatory or putting negative on the atrocities that happens. I mean, they're important to acknowledge and talk about. And I will say it's not easy, but recognizing that like if you go up to something that you want to change and just like push your way and this is how I want it, it's going to close the door. It's going to close the door to anybody who might be the one that's in the way of the change happening. And they're not going to want to learn. They're not going to want to accept it or appreciate it or anything like that. And it is like a balancing act. It's a practice of like ebbing and flow. And I know I have like passion to have like system change, but I also know I can only start right here, and I could start by how I conduct myself and how I interact with the people around me, and have that kind of ripple effect that way. And sharing this kind of information and educating others to find their connection somehow or another, I feel like is how that can move forward. And differences of, especially when a lot of our mainstream society is very Western colonial mindset. There's a difference in Indigenous Native worldview and perspective. There's differences. They're totally different. And that can bring some of that uncomfortability or misunderstanding, because it's like, I'm not used to that. I don't know how to think that way, or how do I modify that to make it fit to my thinking? And one example I heard recently, I appreciated this teaching example, is this one of the stories of the wampum belt. Are you familiar with the wampum belt or what that is? It has like to do with our original constitution and the Iroquois people. And there's this wampum belt that has, and the wampum belt is made with beads, and it's a story. It's a way of communication. And this one example has like blue beads all across, and then white beads. So it's the white beads and blue beads. And the white beads represent one worldview perspective, and the blue beads represent another worldview perspective. And they're different, but they can still go parallel alongside each other. And they're not taking from the other. They're not trying to make the other one be like the other. They're recognizing that they are different, and they can still walk forward and find that peacefulness together. It's just an example, but I appreciated that example for that, and that it is like, even that example itself, like the United States of America is built on these kinds of teachings, and most people don't know that or think about that or recognize that, because it's not what has been taught. because the colonial Western dominating worldview is the lens that it's all been taught through. And any of the other cultures and the people that were living here before the colonizers came, they're like, wait a minute, what? And then they don't see themselves anymore. Like the psychological, all the different aspects of trauma have, created things to be separate and separate and separate and forgotten, or there was kind of pushed to be forgotten and erased. However, and this is a whole nother topic that I've talked about in other classes. However, a lot of that dominant society has also taken from those cultures and modified them into something that they can make money off of, like entertainment, Hollywood, the Boy Scouts, like all these different kinds of things have taken from a culture just for their own, they appropriated it. And so speaking back around to Native cultures, Native American peoples of this continent, they're not from anywhere else. They're from here, from these lands. It makes me think of how maybe you've heard people do land acknowledgements at different events or things like that. That's one little step. That's one little, at least there's an acknowledgement. And some might argue like, well, so what? It's like, yeah, okay, this lands were all stolen and we're still using them and taking advantage of everything. But it does bring up a conversation. It opens the door to conversation. And I often will do a land acknowledgement and I ask the group that I'm sharing that with, like, yeah, so what? So what does that mean? What are we doing about that? And it's just like the conversation has to continue, and people can pick it up or put it down, but I think the change is still going to happen. That's my little bunch of thoughts.
I'm glad that I've lived long enough to see this change start. I didn't think I would, because the history that I learned didn't, it wasn't very truthful. And what I've been learning and unlearning in recent years, I find it shameful that we weren't taught a truer version of our history.
Yeah, and that can be a difficult emotion and feeling to feel, but I always encourage people to feel it. And like there's a teaching with the buffalo itself, the buffalo, when there's a storm, it goes right through it. It doesn't wait or walk around or hide. It goes right through it and it helps you get through it. So it's like feel it and get through it. And then you can see what's on the other side.
Michelle, I was kind of curious. Is there any like integration of Sweat Lodge into like, SOU or, is that because I don't know, for me, that was such a prominent experience to connect my mind, my heart, mind into the earth, into this planet, to be honest. But just like, is there any way that you see of that ever becoming an potential avenue of experience for, some of these students to,
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that. And I definitely recognize, I know what you're saying with that kind of experience. It's very visceral and it's very elemental and has a lot of power and energy in it. And in some of the traditional teachings, this is where it's kind of sometimes could be a gray area, perhaps, but in some traditional teachings, that's not meant to be like a public educational thing necessarily. However, there are ways that is becoming more, I don't know, it can't be like a class. Like I've had the Native Studies chair ask me to do like things like that, but I'm like, but in my teachings, you can't do these things for money. You don't do these things for fame. You do these things because they're spiritual practice. And so it's a little bit of a fence walk right now with that specifically because there's some consideration about making that available for students here on campus. Like there's some movement to try to help that happen. with some land spaces that a lot of the Native Studies programming is pushing for having more space available for us to do these kinds of things that are what we do in our regular lives. But other than that, like out of academia, like it's just kind of knowing the right connections and meeting the right people that you might get invited to participate and get to have that kind of experience. And there are various teachings from different elders in traditional ways that sometimes, because of the generational trauma and lack of trust because of the things that have happened in this country, especially around education, there's a lot of protection around these ceremonies specifically because so many things have been taken. They're like, no, you can't take our ceremonies too. And there's also some healing work that has been happening where, yes, we can share these. We have to share these. We need to share these because everybody needs healing. So that's what I can say to that. Yeah. Is there anything else I could share or talk about? I have all sorts of materials and activities, but I know this is kind of just to be a brief overview. When I had the workshop in the classroom, I have a big blanket that has the medicine wheel on it, and different colors represent different things on it. And I had just shared with the class my experiences around Sundance ceremonies and Sweat Lodge, and how they're very much a medicine wheel protocol. Like that's how they're built. It's we go through different motions and different parts of it that are just connected to these different colors, these different quadrants, these different directions. And I mean, I had the students go out and but decide where north was. Like, who really knows the direction of north from wherever you are? Like, do you know right where you are? Do you know which way is north? And not everybody does. Yeah.
It's that way.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Any other questions or anything?
So many, but you piqued my interest in just so many ways. Thank
All
you.
right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I really appreciate the work you're doing and really appreciate you joining us tonight and somewhat short notice and just jumping in. It's been such a pleasure.
Oh, good. Yeah, I was a little anxious because I'm like, what am I going to talk about? I'm like, oh wait, I can talk about all this.
Have a lot to talk.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I'll be at the conference, so I'll look
Oh,
forward
great.
to then. Yeah.
Oh, good. Yeah. You'll be there in person?
Yeah.
Oh, good. It'll be nice to meet you.
Yeah, me too.
Well, reach out. I can leave my email if you want, or I guess you have it, but and Cheryl, in case you want it, I'm happy to leave you my email.
Yeah, great. I might like to send you something.
Sure. Or ask questions or whatever.
Thanks.
Mhm.